Every once in a while, it is important to laugh at people on your own side. It is important to mock and make jokes and point out how ridiculous people obsessing about the culture war can be, and a perfect example of this is the way that people talk about the House of the Dragon trailer, which, by the way, Game of Thrones ain't what it used to be. The fact that there are so little people talking about this trailer is far more important than the people who are calling different aspects of the trailer woke, and HBO should be warned that maybe they did in fact poison this IP during the course of Season 8 of this show. But today, I'm going to be discussing some of the criticisms that I've heard, and some of this is from my own Discord with people asking me questions related from this, about how this show and this trailer appears to be another example of Hollywood getting woke and becoming woke trash. Woke, woke, woke. It's so terrible and it's woke. Wow, look at House Valerion. They're black. Wow, how woke is this? But before we get into this, we got to talk about our sponsor today, Noble Gold. It's a transition. Loyal sponsor, supporting the sponsor, help support the channel. Let's transition and get back on the other side. Now it is time to set your goals for the next cycle of inflation. That way you're moving forward, making money instead of losing money, and you have the freedom that comes with that. And this month, Noble Gold is offering a very special 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin completely free for anybody who starts a qualifying IRA this month with Noble Gold. You can't go wrong with them. Go to noblegoldinvestments.com, 877-646-5347.
What is this brief mortal life, if not the pursuit of legacy?
Game of Thrones is back, theoretically, hypothetically, metaphorically, and maybe you're not interested in it at all after the disaster that was Season 8. Or you're that guy out there on the internet.com who's just anti anything that becomes a pop culture phenomenon in the United States of America, so you're going to be writing in the comments right now that Game of Thrones always sucked, I hate Game of Thrones, why are you even talking about this? I'm going to watch your whole entire video to condemn you for even discussing this topic. And honestly, I'm not very interested in this show as it stands right now. I'll definitely watch it. I'll definitely hope that it's good. If it does turn out to be woke garbage, I will review it and do videos about how this scene and that scene is in fact woke garbage, just so I can get those clicks, just so I can throw sponsors in there, and just so I can get that oh so sweet YouTube ad revenue. But for the most part, my lack of interest in this series has to do with the fact that A, I'm not very interested in prequels or spin-offs, and this happens to be both.
I don't want it. I never have.
B, the ending of Game of Thrones also poisoned this IP in the minds of me and a lot of people out there in the world, not just on the internet.com. And C, and most importantly, the reason I'm not interested in this is that during the course of watching the TV series, I got really interested in the world that was created by George R.R. Martin, so I got the books on audiobook, and I do believe that working on all these projects, including this TV show, is pulling George R.R. Martin away from finishing the next book in the series, because we still have an unfinished series, and I'd much rather have the conclusion in book form than this show that's based on a history that was written by a maester in character that reads more like an encyclopedia plus 3 short stories. Again, not the breadth of source material to craft a great story upon in order to do a series. So this is just not interesting to me from that regard. I am interested in some ways because of the fact that the budget and what you can do on TV impresses me from a filmmaking standpoint. Not to mention, apparently they threw out a $30 million pilot because HBO didn't think it was good enough. So obviously HBO cares about this IP. Also, they don't have the writers from the Game of Thrones series on board with this. They got a new staff that looks promising. But overall, I'd much rather have The Winds of Winter, and I'd much rather have A Dream of Spring, even though we all know George R. R. Martin is never finishing the books, and I do believe even The Winds of Winter is completely out of reach. It's never coming out. He's too busy doing all the other things that he's doing, and that is really how I feel about this series, and this trailer just doesn't do a lot for me. I opened a little bit with some of the opening of the trailer, and it comes off as really generic with the blahs and like the dun dun dun, and I'm just not a fan of that. I like when things are unique. I hate this cookie cutter thing that we do with all trailers where you go dun 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 and then you cut to silence and then there's people narrating. It's just stop. Do some new trailers. Make trailers more interesting than they actually are. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. What we're here to talk about today is how some people are reacting to some of the allegedly, theoretically woke moments in this trailer. And first and foremost, I present to you House Valerian.
I, Rickon Stark.
I call this Valerian.
Oh my god, there's a black person in this show, and it's House Valerian. They made House Valerian black. This show has gone to trash. Everybody knows that once you have a black actor in there, it's basically wokeism, and it's basically all about racism. God, I hate this. House Valerian is black. Wow, wow, wow. I am super offended by this. Now, I mock, and I make jokes, and I understand the people who say, look, House Valerian is not actually as they're presented in the books, in the source material. They're meant to have the Valyrian look and look very similar to the Targaryens. But here's the thing. In the universe that we've been presented so far, people from the Eastern continent, some of them actually are black. Valerian, this house, much like the Targaryens, are from the Eastern continent. So if you're going to work in diversity, which all these networks were going to do anyway, this is actually not an unintelligent way to do so, because this is a house that we haven't seen in the main series. They're from the Eastern continent. They still have Valyrian features, aka the silver hair or the white hair, whatever you want to call it. So I'm actually fine with them working this into the story in this way, because it actually fits in the story in this way. In our original series, we only had minorities in one part of Westeros, and that was in Dorne, which is based on the Spanish and based on the Arabs. It's like a mixture of the two. But we did have minorities, and specifically black people, that descended from the Eastern continent. So this, I actually think, is a way that fits within the universe that you can kind of get away with it, that actually makes sense, and I'm not going to be critical of it just because they happen to be black. Again, one of my criticisms of the diversity push and the way that the Lord of the Rings series keeps telling you how great they are for having black hobbits is the lack of care and the lack of respect for the source material, because there are other areas that we haven't seen on screen where you could add in a more ethnically diverse cast and that would fit within the lore, or more importantly, it wouldn't contradict anything already presented in the lore.
And just seeing the casting decisions, it's really, really exciting to see. It's just going to mean so much to like me personally, because it's getting that representation in Middle-earth. Young kids are going to see that on screen, and it's just going to be really nice for them to be like, oh hey, there's someone that looks just like me, being like an elf and a dwarf, and yeah, it just fills me with a lot of hope for like the future of the Rings of Power and seeing like much more diversity being included as well.
It's going to be inspiring, right, for the next generation.
Definitely.
On top of that, as somebody who actually has read the source material, as somebody who actually understands the appearances as they're laid out in the source material, this is not the most egregious reskinning of characters presented to us. One of the most crucial aspects of Jon Snow's character and of the Starks and of Catelyn Stark is the fact that all of Ned Stark's true-born children feature red hair and Tully-like features. They don't look like true-born Starks, except for Arya Stark, but nobody cares about her because she's a girl and she's the youngest girl, and I know a lot of people do care about her, even though she's totally ruined in the TV show, but overall, all of the characters don't look like Starks. They look like Tullys, so they look like foreigners in Stark lands. And in the Game of Thrones universe, bastards are often viewed as completely mistrustworthy because they attempt to take the rights of the true-born children. So Jon Snow, who also has a very distinct and important appearance in the show, looking like not only a true-born Stark, but the most Ned Stark-looking version of the children, aside from Arya, is a huge factor in the story. It's one of the reasons why Catelyn hates him so much. It's one of the reasons why she's so mistrusting of Jon Snow. It's one of the reasons why he ended up going to the Wall. And I don't know if you guys know this, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but Kit Harington looks nothing like Sean Bean. This is a crucial actual description of a character that has plot implications in the books, but translated to the TV series, they just went with the actors that they went with and kind of let it roll, and nobody seemed to be bothered by that. So the fact that House Valerion, that we've never seen before, has a skin change that again fits in sort of with the universe that's already established, because we haven't seen any Valyrians, but we have seen black people from Essos, shouldn't be that big of a deal, and it's not something to obsess over. Again, if they start doing things about how, oh, we're the black-skinned Valyrians and we experienced racism and all that horrible stuff, then whatever. Then you guys can get mad about it. But the thing is that the Valerians were actually slavers, so the fact that they're not all white is unironically hilarious, and I think we should all incorporate the fact that we have two families descended from Eastern slavers. One of them's black, and one of them is definitely white. Now, by the way, people also talk about how the Targaryens are supposed to have purple eyes, and this was not brought into the story, but the thing is, and this is honestly something that nobody should be that angry about, it's kind of awkward to ask your actor for a multiple season long show to wear purple contacts that may be uncomfortable over her eyes. We're talking about Emilia Clarke. And obviously, when you expand out the universe into multiple different actors of Valyrian descent, this becomes even more problematic because you have so many different people that are supposed to have these stupid purple eyes that are going to ultimately have to wear those contacts. So I understand why they cut that out. So that's an important part of the series and the description of the Targaryens and the Valyrians that was cut out for the original TV show due to practical reasons. So I'm just going to set that aside. But overall, the actual story implications of the Starks not looking like Ned Stark and looking more like Catelyn is something that they could have done. They cast a bunch of redheads during the course of Game of Thrones' filming, but they chose not to do it, and most people weren't bothered by it. And the fact is, Bran and some of the other Stark kids look way more like Sean Bean than Jon Snow, thus undercutting a component of the story that was actually present in the original story and actually had major plot implications, which is again why I bring it up. So Black Valerion or Black House Valerion should not be a thing that bothers you. Also, their sigil is a seahorse. Why are you guys so worried about a seahorse sigil? It's not a big deal. It's no problem. Let's get into the other thing that some people are calling woke, even though it just shows a complete and utter lack of understanding for the source material that supposedly a lot of these people care so much about.
Men would sooner put the realm to the torch than see a woman ascend the Iron Throne.
Now here's the thing. You could call this a feminist line. You could say that, and it would make sense because George R.R. Martin describes himself as a feminist. But what they're actually adapting during the course of this story is the Targaryen Civil War, A Dance with Dragons. Not the book, A Dance with Dragons, which, by the way, ends on cliffhangers. George released The Winds of Winter, but the Dance of Dragons that's actually a Targaryen Civil War. And what this war is actually about is that the king, I think his name was Viserys, named his daughter the heir to the Iron Throne when he didn't have any sons. He married a second woman who ended up producing sons for him. He decided to keep his daughter as the heir to the Iron Throne, put her in Dragonstone. However, after he died, the mother and a bunch of other people conspired to put her son on the Iron Throne, and thus we ultimately ended up having a civil war between the Targaryens over the issue of whether or not succession goes to the first male in line or it actually goes to the person named by the king.
Promise to be faithful to King Viserys and to his named heir,
Princess Rhaenyra.
Rhaenyra Targaryen.
Now, by the way, we've actually seen this exact same dispute before. Ned Stark, Season 1, named by Robert Baratheon the protector of the realm until his heir actually comes of age, and then Ned Stark tries to use the words of the passed away king. Spoiler alert, Robert Baratheon dies in Season 1 of Game of Thrones. It's kind of a crucial point for the whole story. This show came out in 2010, but I'm still giving you a spoiler alert after the fact to show you how much I care about you. And Ned tries to use that paper as a legitimate claim to that position. However, Cersei has already crowned Joffrey as the king in his stead. So you end up having a little mini version of the same dispute of power that we're seeing, or we will see, in the Targaryen, House of the Targaryen, House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones series, spin-off prequel series, blah, 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 whatever, whatever. So it's the whole point of the story. It's something that actually carries weight throughout the course of the Game of Thrones series, where you have people who name their successor, and it also dates back to English history, where we don't have a clean line of succession. And again, if you read up on any of the source material related to this, the whole point of the story is that people, even though the king named his daughter the heir, don't want female inheritance to take precedent over male inheritance, and thus a civil war breaks out. So this line is perfectly fitting, and also I believe this character was passed over for queenship for a male heir before this whole story ended up happening, so she would know, and it makes a lot of sense for her to tell this to this girl. So if you're gonna call this woke, if you're gonna call like the idea that all these people in this society are sexist and they won't let a woman inherit a woke idea, then you're basically saying the entire premise of the show, the entire point of this story, everything that leads to the conflict in this series is automatically woke because George R.R. Martin wrote a story about the conflicts between female and male inheritance and all that jazz. On top of that, it's also a conflict between the women, you know, the wife and the daughter, the second wife and the daughter. So feminists, whatever, I guess that's woke. I guess we're going to be mad about that. I guess we're going to prejudge it, even though these components were also present in the series. Remember, Daenerys Targaryen was all upset that Jon Snow was the last male heir, but whatever. Doesn't matter. Just call it woke and be mad. Now look, I'm just having a little bit of fun with the people who are so programmed to react to certain things that they see on screen that they're essentially the opposite version of the woke people, or the SJWs, as they used to be called back in the day. I know that's an old phrase, but honestly, to be fair to the people on my side, I haven't seen too much of these reactions from the people who typically cover the wokeness and media angle on the internet.com. And the people who are putting out those videos, the people who are pushing this, I understand you gotta make a living, and I understand that it's hard to actually be a legitimate fan of every single IP you're talking about, especially when the conversation is related to them ruining this IP or whatever. What I'm just saying is that there's certain things that you as audience members need to look out for, and if you're not familiar with the source material, or you only have a superficial understanding of certain source material, then maybe jumping to outrage as soon as you see certain recastings that are obviously done for diversity reasons. I mean, House Valerion being black, they're supposed to look like the Targaryens. I understand that, even though I say it fits in with the established TV universe as much as it can fit in with the establishment TV universe. We all know why they're cast this way. It's just not very wise to have these like gut reactions to everything. Racial recastings for adaptations have happened before, other types of recastings have happened before, and some of your favorite movies, or some of the best movies, do feature this. The Shawshank Redemption is a perfect example of this. Morgan Freeman, not black in the book. That whole joke about how they call him red because he's Irish is actually true, because in the book, he's actually Irish, so it's not even a joke. Andy Dufresne, who's played by a giant in this movie, is actually a much smaller man because, remember, he crawls through a pipe. However, for the cinematic version of this adaptation, they decided to cast a much taller actor to show visually that he's above all these people, even though it didn't make a lot of practical sense to have this giant man crawl through a pipe 300 yards in order to get out of the prison. Spoiler alert for the Shawshank Redemption. I'm sorry for the spoiler alerts after the fact. They did these choices because Morgan Freeman is Morgan Freeman, and again, having the visual representation of Andy being different and above these other prisoners was important for the medium that they're trying to adapt. So maybe House Valerion is going to have actual good actors. On top of that, a bunch of these characters are all dead before these parts of the stories actually happen, so them changing that up, because this is all based on an encyclopedia, is something that you should expect in a lot of different aspects of this series, because all of these characters are actually pretty disconnected in the series that was put forward, or in the source material that was put forward for this series. On top of that, there is a way worse way that they could have gone with the diversity in this situation, and that is something we found out about related to the Long Night prequel that HBO ended up canning, because HBO intended supposedly to have the Children of the Forest be all minorities that must have been cursed by the evil white first men to be children of the forest at some point during the course of the series. This would have been a much more horrible idea. This would have been a much more embarrassing idea. So the idea that you're going to cast an Eastern-based house that we haven't seen before as black people should be something that all of you should be thankful for, because had HBO decided to stick with the Long Night idea, we would have had evil white First Men Stark people cursing the children of the forest, who were just minority people, to be tree people, because aren't white people so racist to the children of the forest? Seriously, worst idea of all time. Way better off with the actors that they're bringing in and whatever they're going to do with these characters. And again, a bunch of these people are going to die before the series is out in the first place. But hey, those are just my thoughts, and I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comments below. Do you think we should go back to Greek theater, where it's all men playing men and women, and we throw all the women out of the theater? You can't be actors anymore, because that's the way we used to do it in tradition. Or do you think that the casting should be reflective of how it was perfectly in the book, and mistakes in the original Game of Thrones series set them aside? Or do you not really care, and are you even looking forward to this, or do you just not care about Game of Thrones? Tell me all the things in the comments below. I will read every single one of them, and by every single one of them, I will read them for 10 minutes after this video goes up, and then I'll fall asleep and get some snacks when I wake up and forget all about you and work on my 20 other videos that are going to come out before the end of the month. Again, let me know, comments down below, like the video, show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social medias. You can support me via the support links in the description box. This has been me talking about House of the Dragon and how some people are jumping on the let's call everything woke bandwagon. Till next time.